There, everyone. It's RCK, and I'm glad to have you here. It's been a little while since I've done one of these nation overviews, of course. I probably won't do, I do a little bit of spells. I probably won't go over a god in this episode. I'll wait. I will have a series coming out for Pangea, and I will go over the god that I chose at that point and the reasons why I did what I did. And of course, we'll go through the entire game. It was a really great game. Really enjoyed playing Pangea. I've never really played much with the MA or LA one, but I have got a decent experience with the EA one in this last game that I played with them. So let's go ahead and start looking here. So see, we have forest beings, stealthy troops, troops that will heal from battle afflictions. Those are really, really nice. And a lot of your troops do have recuperation. That's really awesome for sure. Military, you have Satyr and Minotaur infantry, Centaur archers, and warriors. Cool. As far as your magic goes, you have nature, earth, blood, and some water. Can conjure bramble forts. That is a spell that you get for 35 nature gems. You can kind of summon a fort in a forest, and it gives you like a castle. It's not just a palisade at that point. Can also perform blood sacrifices, which does become kind of a big deal later on in the game. Not as much in the early game, but later on this can become very, very nice for you. Buildings, primitive forts. Forts are 50% more expensive. I will honestly tell you that other than wanting to build a fort on a throne, if there's not already one there, or there might be some sort of special indie and you just want to protect a lab and temple, like it's going to be pretty important to put a fort on it that costs you 50% more. Um, and even then, I would probably just leave it as a temple and a lab, or just a lab, depending on what you need to actually recruit that unit. Because you are not going to want to build forts. I would rather spend the earth gems or the nature gems to have a living castle or a what's the ones I can't remember the one that's named for the fortification. It's the earth spell before you wanted to actually build one. Of course, that is later on before you can cast spells like that. But honestly, between having your special spell to summon for castles and forests for your bramble forts, along with being able to kind of run over someone in the early game, your forts are going to either be forts you have spent nature gems on, uh, or forts you have taken from other people at this point. Very seldom, or forts you have summoned through earth spells and whatnot. So that is really it. I mean, there's no reason to really build too many forts unless you want a fort on the throne, and that is just you need one there in order to protect it, so someone doesn't just knock you off a couple points before you're close to winning. Next, we have temples cost 200 in forest and labs cost 250 in forest. That is a really great reduction there in a forest. I mean, 200 gold off a temple, 250 gold off a off a lab, and that's great because I mean forests are what really you're going to want to be going to at any point. That's in the early game. You're going to be wanting to definitely take as many forests as you can. That is going to ensure that you have many forts later on that you can recruit from. Along with that, just strategically, of course, having that extra cash going to something else versus spending 200 on a temple and 250, or yeah, spending that extra 200 or 250 on a lab and a temple just to get a fort going. I mean, altogether that's 450 gold that you can put somewhere else into mages, troops, anything. So that's a pretty big deal. This is really great great stuff for your buildings for sure. Here we have the Grove of Gaia. Now this is going to be your special capital site. It gives you 6 nature gems a turn, and you also get your pride and joy, the White Centaur. Now this is a unit we'll go over later, and this is a very strong unit for sure. You'll see people do all kinds of stuff with them. Usually people will try to hell bless them do some sort of funny bless, but these guys are extremely strong, really great in the early game. So let's see what we have here as far as our units go. So first here we have the Harpy. Can be recruited in all forests. Okay, of course most of our forts are going to be forest, so that's not going to be a problem at all. Very cheap. Very cheap. Sorry, there's a hair in my mouth. It's the only problem with having a beard sometimes. There we go. Very cheap. 7 gold. Very cheap on resources and recruitment. Of course, they're not much to look at. 0 protection, size 2, 7 hit points. I mean, they're not. You're not going to get them to really do a lot of killing. Okay. They, interestingly enough, do have recuperation, stealthy, flying, forest survival. But something very interesting about them, they could be stealthy raiders if you want them to, or they can also have a pretty decent patrol strength here. Being as cheap as they are, getting almost 2 patrol strength is pretty nice. Definitely trying to get your blood economy going. These guys could be used as some early. I know they're not free for sure since they're 6 gold apiece. But as far as getting a early patroller going, these guys are pretty decent. Past that, I really wouldn't use them for much of anything. Maybe a few of them in an army just to have them attack rear as the first move in order to stop maybe some casting or something. Might mess with somebody. So that is all for them. They do have 32 map move, which is impressive. I will say that. Next, we have the group of Satyr units here. Altogether, I think I recruited very few of them in the game. I think I recruited a couple of them early on just to have something to either break lance charges or some sort of chaff. But normally it's harpies if you want to help with siege strength. I mean, these guys, I mean, they're not going to do much at all for you, to be honest. And we'll look through all these. They can be used as raiders if you wanted them to. They do cause unrest, which is unfortunate. They have recuperation, and they are also undisciplined, as also very tough to get buffs on them. But they have stealth 60, which is pretty nice. A bronze spear with 14 damage. Let me take a sip of water real fast. As far as their protection goes, they only have furs, so not much at all. So, pretty interesting. I mean, you can put them in a province, maybe a farmland or something, have them really cause a lot of unrest before the opponent decides that he needs to go over and patrol it. You know, you can try and mess around with stuff. Next, we just have a satyr here. They do have a javelin, which is kind of nice, much better than their last unit here. They can do a little bit of damage here with that range 11 javelin they can throw. Overall, very similar unit. Still undisciplined, but they don't cause unrest, which is also nice if you're keeping them in your land. We have the Satyr Warrior. Better stats overall. A lot more defense skill there with that shield. Magic resistance of 13 is pretty nice, but protection 6 is still low. These guys are still going to die pretty fast. Recruitment points of 21 is kind of high. But, I mean, they will stop a little bit of arrow fire with their shield since they don't have, or they do have a little bit more than just a fur. Last, we have the Reveler. They do also cause unrest, but they are berserkers, berserk 3. They can get in, they can do some damage. They do have 2 attacks. They have a 0 length hoof attack and then a 3 length bronze spear attack. On top of berserk, with these skills here, it's going to be okay. Berserk 3 is nice. They might be able to do a little bit of damage, but I mean, overall, they're not really units you need, especially playing EA Pain. You just have so many other units that are just so much better. 40 stealth as well. It's not bad. And here we see, well, other than one of them, we'll see this group of centaur choices here. We have archer versions, and then we have a spear cav version here. So you have the centaur and the centauride, which is the male and the female version of the centaur archer here. They have the hoof, bronze dagger, and then they have a 45 length longbow attack. Um, if you want to do archers, you're more than welcome to. Most of your troops, though, don't have shields, so you might come into a situation where you're hurting yourself a lot. Other than that, I mean, they're just a cav archer. Not too much to be said. Um, like I said, very proud. I don't think I really made any of these guys, honestly. I don't feel like they were really needed, but they are nice. A very nice flavor unit to have. Of course, they have no armor at all, only being protection 3. Uh, but I mean, their longbows do pretty decent damage. They're decently ranged. And then we have the female version. They don't shoot as far since their strength isn't as high. But they're basically the same thing here. Is there any real... Just that the strength is higher for the centaur, but the defense skill is higher for the centauride. Eh. Next we have the centauride warrior and then the centaur warrior here. Overall, I would say that the centaur warrior is the better choice as far as the two. Sure, the centauride warrior does have a javelin, a shield, very decent stats here overall. Prices, I feel like decently priced. Stats as far as resources and recruitments, it look fine. Magic resistance 13, protection 9. I mean, you have a decent unit here, but then you look at the centaur warrior, which is actually 5 gold more expensive, and then you get berserker 3 added to that. And I do think you have a light lance and a hoof, and this one has javelin, so you do lose the javelin, and you do gain an additional cost of 5 extra gold. But, I mean, once that berserker 3 starts to proc on a 22 hit point unit, I mean, they're definitely going to get hit once or twice, and they're going to be going to town. They're going to be hitting just about everything. I think defense skill drops when you go berserk. I don't remember. I'll have to check. I know your strength goes up. So yeah, and they have recuperation on top of that. So even if they are taking a few hits every game, yes, or every turn, every battle, I'm sure if they're racking up afflictions, they're just going to heal them with recuperation, and they're just going to be so much stronger having berserk. You're not going to have to worry about them routing throughout the battle. So that is a very, very interesting unit here. Map move 20, very, very high map movement. These guys are very fast. A very cool unit we have here. So I found that later on in the game, because you do kind of phase out of white centaurs. I mean, yes, they're always going to be strong, but you can't. I mean, even if you mass them, of course you're going to take attrition, and if you get large enough, I've noticed, we'll see a huge game that I played in. And you can just really rely on centaur warriors. They're going to be just as good once you get all the buffs on them. I'm sure they won't have your bless. But, I mean, you're not going to be able to have an unlimited amount of white centaurs where you can just continuously make centaur warriors, since the white centaur is a cap-only unit. You are limited on how many you can have. Next, we have our 2 minotaur units. We have a minotaur, and then we have a minotaur warrior. I'd say the only real difference between the two, berserker 4, these are undisciplined, recuperation, they have trample. Very, very high damage attack here being 28, but the attack skill being 8, defense skill of 7. I mean, they're not going to hit shit. They have a pretty high strength. Siege strength is pretty nice at 2.6. But, I mean, honestly, this is a 40 gold unit that the siege strength can be replaced by 2 harpies. Siege strength of 1.3. Minotaur, siege strength of 2.6. So that's a 14 gold cost versus a 40 gold cost. And sure, Harpy isn't as effective in battle, but I mean, you're really only buying this guy for Berserker Trample. I mean, that's really about it. And a very high damage hit here. 25 hit points is good, but I mean, once he starts getting into those blobs of troops from trampling, he's going to go fast. I mean, he only has 9 protection, so you have to keep that in mind. And 7 defense skills, so he's not going to be long for this world. And then we have the Minotaur Warrior, a little bit more expensive, going up to 50 gold, 27 hit points, has 9 protection, so he has leather instead of furs. Still decent map move at 16. But, I mean, strength 17. He's got one more strength. Yeah, one more strength, so he hits a little bit harder. Attack skill and defense skill is still crap. You have Berserker 5 instead of Berserker 4, which is nice as well. But very, very expensive here. So, like I said, unless you just want to make these guys for flavor, honestly, very few moments where you actually need these. I do wish they were a little bit better. Because, I don't know, just Centaurs and Minotaurs are just kind of your strong units. But really for Pan, their major units here are going to be their Centaurs as far as their on the battlefield presence in the early game. Finally, we'll look at the best piece that they have here. This is their cap-only sacred, being the White Centaur. We have a 55 gold unit, 12 resources, 29 recruitment points, 23 hit points, 9 protection, magical resistance 14, morale of 12. And then we look at its other stats here. Strength 14, attack skill 11, defense skill 17. This is getting really, really good. Combat speed 29. These are very, very fast cav units. Map move of 20. They're going to be able to move a couple provinces every turn. That is great. Siege strength 1.6. Or that was patrol strength of 1.6. Yeah, that was patrol strength 1.6. And then the siege strength is actually 2. So, then we look at the rest of what this unit has here. Bronze Lance with 17 pierce damage, a hoof, a javelin attack along with that. With some people forget they do have javelins and they shouldn't just be on attack. Maybe sometimes they could be on fire, and then once they use their javelins, they'll run into combat. Sorry, my throat's pretty dry. I just finished another video. What is another big deal that we see here? They have a cap. They have a shield, they have some armor pieces, they have recuperation, so this is great. These guys are going to be really tough to kill. And as normally a lot of units, they'll just gain afflictions over time before it does finally kill them. But White Centaurs, I mean, they're just going to heal them. They have Far Survival, they have Berserker 3 along with these great stats that they have here. And they are Sacred and Stealthy. These are wonderful units for you to have. And this is going to carry you through the early game of any game that you play in, to be honest. This is what you should be making, and once you get to a point where you can maximize the total amount of White Centaurs you can make from your capital every turn, that's what you're going to want to be making. That's what you're going to want to be spending your money on. Because you're going to be wanting to take someone out of the game before turn 20 with these guys. That's what you're going to be able to do. You have a great expansion with these. You can also expand with White Centaurs, or not White Centaurs, but you can also expand with just Centaur Warriors. But White Centaurs are going to be what kills other factions or enemies, of course, in the early game. Yeah, sure, the recruitment points of 29 is kind of steep, but we can deal with that. Overall, I mean, a great unit here. You're definitely going to want to plan around and using them in the early game for sure. And now let's go ahead and head over to our mages. Of course, we have a lot of very nice stuff here. So let's go ahead and check out this commander. Sorry if the video seems a little choppy. It had to take me a little break. I worked on my fish tanks for a little bit to see my voice get back to normal. So here, first off, we have the Black Harpy, a very great scout unit that we have, of course, that Pangea has access to. A flying, stealthy, recuperating, 25 gold, 34 map movement scout that can be recruited in every forest. So if you don't have a fort yet, I recommend spending the 25 gold in as many forests as you can, making as many scouts as you can. I love scouts. You want as much knowledge as you're able to get at any point in the game, okay? These are great, cheap, super fast flying scouts. It's tough to get better than this, to be honest. So next we have the Satyr Commander made. None of these, I feel, throughout the entire game, not really needed. Leadership 40, you're not really getting any buffs at all for your morale. Sure, they can be used as cheap fodder that goes out and does some raiding for your satyr troops if you want to decide to do some raiding troops that way. I mean, you can also use Centaur warriors to raid, and they're just so much better, or exponentially better, to the point where they can take out a pretty decent amount, pretty decent chunk of PD as well, and they're also stealthy. Next, we have the Minotaur Lord, a Trample Berserker 5 Minotaur. If you'd like one, I've seen people put items on him, kind of thug him out a little bit. Not particularly my playstyle. I mean, I will thug things out, just not necessarily a Minotaur Lord. He just doesn't quite have. I mean, map move 18 is decent, but it is what it is. I wouldn't necessarily either want a Berserker commander either that's going to run into the battle, get themselves killed, you know. So I don't think I made any of these. I mean, if you want to make a Minotaur Lord, I mean, they are better leadership than your satyrs if you decide to have a commander at all. So next we have the Centaur Hierophant, and we have the Hierophantide. Basically just the male and female version of this mage, that Centaur mage that we have here. As far as they go, they both have their own separate uses, of course. They're 120 gold, 4 resources, 2 recruitment points, 23 hit points, high magical resistance at 15. Sure, the protection is 3, but you can fix that pretty easily with a body slot there. Decent strength, attack, and defense skill. They are also sacred. They have inspirational 1. So even though they do have lower than average leadership, they're not necessarily the commander you want to be taking. Since they don't have high leadership, they do have inspirational, so they will get a bonus to morale. They have recuperation. They're stealthy. They're sacred. They're also priest level 1. That might become handy for you in order to bless small groups of white centaurs you're using a raid with, or just using them to bless an army. Bring a couple of these guys, and I promise you, you're going to want a couple of these guys in the army. Their paths are earth or nature. Of course, earth path is great for thugging. Of course, your nature path can be used for thugging as well, not as efficient as the earth path would. Along with that, they can cast things like protection, they can cast swarm, they can cast other things that are very easily be useful in an army for sure. But those earth ones are going to be great raiders for you. Along with that, yes, I do use these guys to raid a lot. Just a small, cheap handful of equipment, just like a sword, maybe a chest plate, and that's it. Send them on their way. They'll go and kill some PD. Other than that, I would recommend having a lot of these inside of an army that is currently moving around with great swords of sharpness, frost brands, and whatever else you could throw on them, because they are going to put some real work in whenever you get them there. These guys are going to chew through anything with a great sword. Whatever bless you have on them, they're going to be great. Next, we're going to look at the female version. Very, very similar, of course. Their stats are a little different from the male and female version, but the big difference they have between them are the paths that they can have. Now, instead of a earth path, they will have a water path instead. Still some good buffs along with the water path. It's nice to have, of course, a large variety of paths in your army. They can cast quickness on themselves and such, and liquid body and things like that, making them even more difficult to kill. So those are decent thugs as well, and it's nice to have some of both if you ever need them. But as far as they go, you'll probably have more of the male than the female versions anyway. Just because they do make better thugs, having that earth path for sure. Next, we're going to be looking at the Dryad and the Dryad Mother. Altogether, I made very few Dryad Mothers, maybe 1 or 2. But the Dryad itself, just like the Centaur Hierophant here, you're going to be making tons of both of these, okay? So it's 185 gold, kind of expensive. That's definitely not your main researcher as far as that goes. Pretty high map movement overall at 18. Hit points 11, kind of low. Protection 0, really low. Of course, there's nothing there. MR of 16 is pretty nice. Morale 10, not that big of a deal. Leadership 40, okay, sure. Basic stats here. But they're going to have all these items they can have if you decide to put items on it. Normally, you really don't have to. They are also priest level 2, important for some reasons. They have a water 1, nature 1 path, so with a booster and the extra gem, they can cast Foul Vapors if they're ever needed. They have awe, they're stealthy, they're far survivor recoup, supply bonus because they have nature path, seduction. What? Okay, so we have assassins here in Pangea. So they're going to go and seduce a commander. There's a good chance this is versus a morale. Their morale, of course, I think it's 12 versus whatever morale they have. I'm not entirely sure on that. They can only seduce the opposite sex, so you have to keep that in mind. But most of the commanders in the game are male commanders, and this is a female, so they're going to be able to seduce a majority of everything they come by. But this is going to be a really great commander for you for sure. Great assassin, even though they're seducers. So when a seduction fails, instead of nothing happening, they go into a battle. So that is where this nature 1 path really starts to shine, being that you can cast Swarm for 1 nature gem and basically kill any commander for mostly. And you also are priest level 2, so if they start doing Horde of Skeletons, well, they're just gonna, the Dryad's just gonna be able to get rid of them, being a high holy mage. So that's great. This is basically all you're gonna use them for. Seduction. That's it, and this is going to make them a super good commander. It's going to be extremely difficult for any of your opponents to really take you on, per se, because there is always that chance of them losing a pretty powerful mage of theirs. You can definitely gain a couple powerful mages yourself. On top of that, just messing up communions, messing up, maybe they don't have enough slaves now. Maybe you seduced one of their gem carriers, and regardless if they died or were seduced, they're still out of the way and they still don't have them at this point. So that is going to be very, very powerful for you. I feel like Dryads are especially useful into the mid or late game. Not as useful in the early game just because you don't have access to things that would make them as great as they are. And I'll tell you, a great combination with these guys is Dark Skies and having super high, or of course I think you max out 10, but having people fight into you with Dark Skies up and having Dryad defense, it is miserable to fight through. So that is a really, really cool unit we have here. Water 1, not as great, but still useful nonetheless. So yeah, very, very nice unit we have. They also are Beastmaster, not as important. So yeah, this is going to be one of your best mages that you have. And then you have the Dryad Mother, who has a Water Earth chance to level in Magic, and then a 10% chance of Water Earth Nature. But all in all, this is basically the same as a Dryad, except you're going to be able to get Water Earth on them, and then a low chance of something else. But this is a Nature 2 versus a Nature 1. So they can cast Swarm a couple more times throughout the battle if needed to. They're still Priest level 2, all 5, still have Seduction, Stealthy 65. But, I mean, you're really not going to need too many of these. Yeah, honestly, I mean, that's really it. You really don't need any of these at all. It's basically all up to the Dryads. Like I said, I made 1 or 2 of these. They have the ability maybe to charm things if you want to charm something instead, but I'd say that there is another unit that is much better at doing so that you have access to. But yeah, Dryad Mother's okay. Dryad is a much better mage. I mean, of course you say, oh well, but this one has has more paths in it. It has whatnot. It can thug pretty well. Well, you really don't want it to thug. All you want to do is to seduce things, and if it can't seduce them, to be able to kill them. So, I mean, yeah, having that earth path or water path makes them a little bit tougher, and you're not relying on Swarm as much at that point. You're getting them out to fight, but I mean, their stats aren't that great. And that's a 300 gold unit that you're using instead of a 180 gold unit to do that. So, I mean, it is what it is. And lastly, we have the Pan, which is a really, really cool unit you have here. Does serve multiple purpose for you throughout the game. 300 gold, takes 2 turns to recruit, can be recruited out of any fort you have. I thought it was only forest, but it says any fort. Or it doesn't say only forest. So, Earth 1, Nature 4, which is a big deal. Blood 1, which is a big deal. And I'd almost say Earth is also a big deal too. But, and then you have a 100% chance to either random Earth or Blood. Then 10% chance for Earth, Nature, or Blood. On top of that, they have Animal Omp, not as important. Poison resistance, they're stealthy. Of course, almost your entire army is going to be stealthy, which is great. They have recuperation, which is pretty nice. They're also a monster summoner, so they have a chance of summoning 1 or more monsters per month. They're going to be summoning up, what are they called? Goodness, I'm either forgetting what they are off the top of my head. Does it say it here? Maenads. These are going to be free units. They're not going to be very good patrollers. I don't think they patrol at all. But the more you have in turmoil, the more the Maenad spawn amount will go up. And this is going to be your chaff. This is why you don't need satyrs in a front. This is why you don't really need any kind of front unit. I mean, you have great cav, and you have tons of chaff throughout pans. I mean, they're just going to be summoning them every turn. And there's going to be great. Other than that, I mean, having a blood 2 is going to be great for blood hunting. Of course, you're going to use your blood 1s as well. I mean, you'll able to power up through blood, kind of through that. You'll be able to make a earth booster with a blood 2, earth 2, I think. So boots and a random on blood or a blood item. And that will get you up to blood 4 at least, depending on what random you have. Maybe even blood 5. Or not blood, but Earth 5, and that is going to be great for things like Army of Gold, Army of Lead in the late game. I know this is way later on. They can cast a spell that makes forts. They can cast a spell that makes forts and forests as well, being a nature 4. They have access to blood, which is great, especially going into mid to late game. This is where you're going to be your blood hunters until you start to find something better, be it vampires. That's what I did. I really started with pans and I transitioned into vampires, since vampires can make more vampires. And of course I wanted pans for other things, wanted armies. I kept using the Maenads, had to move them around a lot. So yeah, this gives you tons of paths here. I mean, 7 paths for 325. I mean, that's pretty decent, along with an extra random on top of that you might get. I mean, with 1 booster, you're already looking at a Nature 5. That's a very, very powerful Nature mage. You're going to be casting things like Howl, Mass Protection, Mass Regen, and these are going to be all spells you're going to be putting on every battle. Along with that, there's also the spell that, it's not Creeping Doom. Creeping Doom is the large swarm cast. It's I do not remember. Actually, I do want to, goodness, I did want to look at the gods. Well, Growing Fury, that's what it's called. And it starts to kind of give all your units berserk, and that really helps you out when fighting really drawn out battles that you don't want to run from, because sometimes you can win just by making sure your units don't run. So that is pretty powerful as well. But yeah, that is their lineup, and honestly, it is a great one. Okay, the combination of white centaurs in the early game, great. You can turn from white centaurs to having centaur warriors en masse along with white centaurs, just because of how much you're going to be able to expand. And then past that, your mage lineup is just ridiculous. I mean, you have great thugs, you have seducers, you have really, really powerful nature, blood, mages that you have going on here that also random earth, so you're going to be able to cast great earth spells as well. Don't count it out, because just by having your first earth random, you're going to be at earth 2. Earth 2 you can make boots, so you're having earth 3, and I think from there you can make the bloodstone. That will give you Earth 5. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Oh no, that's Earth 4. My bad. So you already have an Earth 4. They can do summon Earth power, go up to Earth 5. Yeah, that is great. And then kind of the same with blood. You can random blood 2. You might have to empower in order to make the knife for blood 3. Might have to empower again to make the chain. No, you have the nature blood chest plate. It's like nature 3 blood 1 or something. So yeah, you can go high into blood 2 fairly easily. And this is great. You have your early game patrollers being harpies before you get free chaff. Yes, sure, you have unlimited free chaff from Maenads there. Just to block anything that you want them to block. I can't remember if Maenads. I think Maenads don't have any upkeep, but they can't patrol. There's something up with that. So yeah, this is a great lineup for sure. We're gonna look here and see at their choices of gods. They have a decent amount of choices here. They have the immobiles. Monolith is a good choice. Fountain of Blood. They have a lot of very nice awake expanders they could also use, or titans, of course. The Lord of the Wild looks interesting. The Horned One, Mother of Monsters, Great Archon, the Great Mother. I've seen people use Titan of Growth, not necessarily for Pan, but I've just seen it used. Drakina here, I've seen that used before, not for Pan, but other nations, just being a Titan. I have choice of Demon Lich, they have the Carrion Dragon, they have the Bulls, but honestly, they don't need help with expanding early on in the game. They have Gorgon, Cyclops, Earth Snake, Dragons, the Raven. I've seen that. Raven's interesting. I've never taken it myself. They have their choices of all the small human chassis, Sage chassis, the Frost Father. They have this Enchantress here, which is interesting. So yeah, they have lots and lots of choices. They have the Drakon, they have the Demiurge. I've seen people take the Hound of Shades as just an expander, I think. So yeah, lots and lots of cool things they have here for sure. Lots of choices for you. Just press OK. I do want to check their national spells. I think it's only Grove Fortress that they have, but I want to double check just to make sure. I think they do have those song ones or whatever they are, and we'll look at them. I think let's have a Monster Boar. They have Grove Fortress, so it's level nature 4, 35 gems. Of course, when you make 6 gems a turn, you're going to have that pretty fast. You're going to have Sight Searchers for nature out. So Grove Fortress is going to be very nice for you to take, or be able to use pretty easily, having a couple forts up. Mother Oak is also something you're going to be able to take, and I doubt anyone's really going to fight you for it. Yeah. Being as strong in nature as you are, having as much nature income as you already have, no one's going to fight you for it, and you're going to be able to get early on. I'm not really necessarily looking for ideas on telling you what to do. I'm just looking for their national spells. So for the nature here, we also have the Tune of Fear, frightens nearby enemies. Tune of Growth, makes roots and vines grow around the ground, entangling nearby enemies. Okay. Tune of Dancing Death. So this is a fatigue damage. Nearby enemies start to jerk and move around in an uncontrolled manner. They become exhausted and eventually fall asleep unconscious unless the musician stops playing. So they all have their uses here. It's definitely things you can you think about using. Fatigue one might actually be pretty decent. Magic resistance negates. Just to be like an anti-thug type thing. What's the range? 25. Oh, that have to be close. Entanglement is also decent. Fear, not so much. Can't say much of a fan of Fear. I have the Hamadryad. Tree Nymphs, Wise. Okay. I don't think I ever used this spell, but it is interesting. It's a tree that they summon. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure, and I do want to talk about some other spells. So later on, the Thaumaturgy really isn't something I go for too often, but at Thaumaturgy 7, you have two great spells for you, if you're able to cast them, of course. Dark Skies, you're going to have to take this on your god, unless you get incredibly lucky, but this is going to be a great spell for you to have, super defensive. And then there's also Charm, which is a big one if you don't want to take air on your god. Charm was really what I came down here to talk about. So what Charm does, being a Charm spell, become totally loyal to the caster of the spell. Charm Commander will retain special skills and magic items, benefit new caster. Okay. So it is fatigue cost 30, precision 100, range of 25, armor negating, magic resistant negates. So your penetration items are going to help with that charm. So with a, what am I looking for here? Recruitment, pan. So with a pan, with a blood 2, you can make a black heart. Black heart allows assassinations. You're going to be able to use a pan in an assassination. A nature 4 or so on pan is going to be a great charm caster. You can cast Creeping Doom turn 1 to block up anything, or Swarm, depending on how far you have, to block up anything that may be coming at you. Of course, this is an assassination battle, so it's only going to be the commander there unless they have a bodyguard. And then on top of that, you're going to be casting Charm non-stop after that. And with a couple of pin items, I mean, you can get them down to, what, +4 pin at least with a staff, a rod, and then the eye piece. That's gonna be pretty good. That's pretty good. That's gonna be, makes it extremely difficult for many mages to get past that, get through all those bugs, and then resist that many charms on top of all that penetration on them. So there's a pretty neat little way to really get those. How would I say those? Those mages that were that are really difficult for dryads to take advantage of, and still able to take them as your own without having to use a dryad to seduce them. So that is something I did want to talk about for sure. There was another spell as well I think is pretty strong. Of course, Serpent's Blessing is great. You're going to want to put up Foul Vapors as soon as you can, along with Serpent's Blessing. Now, of course, you have your other poison-resistant spells early on, which you're going to use. But as soon as you get Serpent's Blessing, there's no reason not to put that in Foul Vapors up every turn, or every battle. Mass Flight is pretty nice as well. You'll have to build around that, of course. A Mass Regen is going to be a really, really strong one for you, because all of your centaurs are going to be at 20-some HP, so that means you're going to be getting 3 hit points per turn. I mean, that's a lot. They're going to be berserking, they're going to be able to heal from their hits they're going to take while they're berserk. And then there's also Gift of Health, 10% per dominion of or 10% health per dominion, so this is going to greatly increase your HP. This is going to work very well with mass regeneration. You guys are going to be tanks after that. Along with that, in the enchantment, there's also one down here called Gift of Nature's Bounty. It is a Nature 7, costs 70 Nature Pearls. Of course, you're going to want to put it up for a lot more. But it gives you 20% income per Dominion candle. This is awesome. I have never really played with Gift of Nature's Bounty, or never put it up. But once you do have it up and you play with it, it's a completely different game. You're going to be able to produce as much as you want out of every fort, and you're just going to be collecting money hand over fist. So that might be one of your in-game goals. At that point, you can just throw enough money at something, you can deal with most things. But yeah, great army composition, great mage lineup, great access to magic. I don't know really what else you want me to say about Pangea. I mean, just this start here, you have. I mean, of course, you don't want to put forts here beside your cap, which is unfortunate. But you can put one there at 17 and maybe one at 26 or 21, depending on which one has the most. I did put one fort beside my capital, and I still had enough to make as many white centaurs as I could for the amount of holy points that I had at the time in the early game, of course. But at this point, like, you have no reason of really fighting into this area over here. There's nothing you want unless you're going to make it all the way to 82 or 35. You're going to be focusing down to 136, over to 4 or 13, and you're going to be wanting farce. That's what you're going to be hunting for in the early game before you start taking people's forts and capitals. So guys, I know this was not as drawn out as my other overviews have been, but I have enjoyed my time doing it. Hopefully I will be able to show that game here relatively soon. Let's see, Scoregrass, Printers. And yeah, those are my ideas on EA Pangea. Really great nation. I think you should try it out for sure if you're ever interested in it. First time I ever played it, and I really, really enjoyed playing them. I do enjoy very fast nations, flying nations, things like that. And the centaurs and whatnot, I mean, they're fast. So they can maybe move 2 provinces a turn, depending. So yeah, for sure, definitely check this nation out, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.